First, though, let me turn briefly to something else that you might have heard about this week. The case of Jack Shepherd. This is the man who was given a 6-year prison sentence for manslaughter by gross negligence last year. A woman died during a first date with him when his speedboat flipped over. He has now launched an appeal, partly funded through bank loans, partly by the taxpayer through legal aid. All of that sounds normal and acceptable, except for the fact that Jack Shepherd's been on the run for some time. Now his lawyer has been criticised for agreeing to represent him as well. Let's get the view on this of a lawyer who defends people accused of very serious crimes. It's Joseph Kotrie-Monson from Monson Solicitors on Fleet Street in London. Joseph, good morning. Thank you for joining me. What have you made to some of the reaction to what's gone on in this case?
We're placed in difficult positions as lawyers, Darren, because of course our job is to represent our clients' interests and act as a mouthpiece for them in a legal context, even if we're not emotionally attached to their case. But as if we are, we find ourselves in positions sometimes in order that we carry out that sacred duty in society that everybody has a voice in proceedings. You know, that sometimes we get placed in situations where there are challenges, that might seem like emotional challenges, but in terms of the duties that we have to the court, the duties that we have to justice, despite how they look, they're not actually ethical challenges. And
what's really difficult here, of course, is that we are talking about someone who is convicted.
This is a case where the trial happened rightly in his absence because he absconded, but his lawyer has launched an appeal on his behalf, and that has got past a single judge, and that means that permission has been given by a Court of Appeal judge on paper who thinks that there is at least an arguable case that there was something about the way in which the trial took place that could render the conviction unsafe. So, and for that to be the case in a situation where the defendant wasn't even present and didn't provide an explanation, it's incredibly rare. So I think we must be very careful, no matter how odious we think in the context of the defendant, in the context of not attending for a trial in such a tragic case, because we have to say all of this in the context of extreme respect and sympathy, not just to the family, but also to the memory and the life of poor Charlotte Brown.
Well, I come at this as the partner of a lawyer, in fact, who's been my partner for over 20 years, and right. I've had it sort of drummed into me over the years, actually. there is real importance to be attached to the principle that everybody is entitled to representation and to mitigation, even those who are unambiguously guilty. And I appreciate the ambiguity in this particular case, but even those who are found to be guilty, even those who are serving sentences, still have the right to representation within the criminal justice system, don't they?
Yeah, and it's very important, actually, because, of course, we say, those who are definitely guilty still require the right. We only can know that they are guilty if they've gone through that process and they have been vigorously defended as if they were defending themselves with the legal abilities and the legal knowledge to be able to do so, and the awareness of the rules, etc. So it's actually the process itself and being properly represented in that process, and the public not going beyond and saying, well, this person's guilty, therefore they don't deserve the right. The whole purpose of criminal proceedings is to get to the truth. In order for that to be an accurate truth, in order for us to know not just that the guilty go to prison, but fundamentally that innocent people definitely don't go to prison, all have to be represented properly. And of course it means that solicitors, barristers, we're often doing a very thankless job because we're having to really represent strongly anyone who comes through our door as if they were a friend or a close family member. And that's just so important because it's the basis upon which we know that the guilty are in prison and we know that the innocent haven't been convicted.
And is that something that you personally struggle with or have struggled with on occasion?
Frankly, if somebody comes to me Darren, and says, I'm in this situation, I need help. Well, it's not my job to look beyond the fact that they need my help. These are people who I've usually never met before outside this context. They're coming to me, often their mothers or their fathers, saying, represent my boy, represent my daughter. There's actually no greater honour than some stranger coming to you and saying, I believe that you can represent my child. I believe that you can represent what is most important to us. I have to say, I have very little moral compunction for helping somebody who needs my help. If they're guilty, they'll be convicted. They deserve a voice.
And you think, Joseph, that there's no problem with this person getting legal aid either?
Yeah, I mean, it's really important, Darren, to separate the issue of absconding, which is, we all have a problem with someone who doesn't, that's legal speak for someone who doesn't attend court, and legal aid, which is there to make sure proceedings are fair and to make sure that the jury get as close to what happened as possible without impediment. Now, the consequence of absconding is the trial goes ahead without you. That's the remedy for that, and that happened in this case. But the problem is that one Court of Appeal judge has already said that there's a flaw in the way that trial went ahead, or might have been a flaw in the way that trial went ahead, which means the convictions could be unsafe. Isn't it useful, if we want to know what really happened, that the defendant in that case, even though he wasn't there, has got legal aid in order that we can know that conviction is an accurate one? This is not about punishing somebody for not attending, because our justice system should be held up to a higher standard than just arbitrary punishment of somebody irrespective of the facts. It should be about getting to the truth of what happened. For that to happen, whether you like it or not, people need lawyers.
Joseph, thank you very much for that. Joseph Kotrie-Monson from Monson Solicitors on Fleet Street. Thank you for joining me this morning.